Because essentially that section there is like a polished mirror, isn't it? It's so reflective.
Right. It's just hung up in a hanger, and it's reflecting the doors and everything around the walls.
And I bet if you zoomed in on that man, he'd resemble Douglas Trumbull.
Brian Cox.
Yeah, I do.
This one is quite interesting because, of course, the watch says 11:15. Now, Buzz Aldrin descended officially to the lunar surface at 3:16:15 UTC time. This photograph was taken 59 minutes and 20 seconds after he descended onto the lunar surface. So UTC time, it should say 4:15.
I wonder what the local time is on the moon. How many hours ahead is it?
And what's the make of the watch? I mean, is it a particular brand?
Oh yes, it's Omega is the brand of watch.
Omega, yeah.
No,
You can still buy that watch today for about 25,000.
Wow.
But Dave, I've not seen them advertise the fact that their watch went to the moon. I mean, you think that their brand?
Yes, you just go on the Omega website.
Oh, they do.
Buy that watch today. The lunar watch is actually one of their cheaper models. They have much more expensive models than $25,000 ones.
Wouldn't that be lubricated slightly with some minor mechanical oils or something? Or a watch?
I have no idea what they would put in a watch.
And the temperature variation again. You have like
Yeah.
marks like the very hot conditions in the sunlight and extremely cold conditions in the shadow. Could a watch like that actually function in that kind of environment?
Yeah.
Because it's very delicate clockwork, you know. It's like little springs and cogs and gears and things.
That's right. Yeah.
Any metallic expansion, you know what it's like.
The battery would keep it running?
I went to Canada in 97, I think it was, and I took my SLR camera and it was just failing. And that was kind of minus 10 degrees, I think. And
yeah, they don't like the batteries on those sorts of things.
Yeah, it was just failing. Like the shutter mechanism wasn't working properly. Went back into the warmth and it started working again. So we're meant to believe that a watch like this, an intricate watch, is supposed to operate in huge temperature differences.
Well, you know what happens to a pen-light battery when the liquid leaks out of it? It quits working, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
What's going to happen to a battery in a vacuum?
Yes.
How fast is that going to explode and everything going to leak out of it? Never mind the temperature.
Another point, which is mentioned by Megan Hewell, who is an astrophysicist, and she's a defender of the NASA and their official story of the Apollo missions, is that metallic objects like that in a lunar environment could actually produce radiation when they come into contact with, say, high frequency, for instance, X-rays and things like that. So it could actually add to the radiation problem. So all the metallic surfaces on the entire mission could, in a sense, make it even more dangerous.
Well, sure, it could be gamma rays, microwaves, anything coming.
Scott,
you want to take this one, Marcus?
What's that? Say again?
Would you like to take this picture?
Yep. What, the Aldrin? It's the Aldrin coming down the ladder picture, isn't it?
Yeah, and where the TV camera is supposed to be and why it isn't there.
Well, it was supposed to be on the left-hand side. It was lowered down on a shelf.
Yeah, it's supposed to be right in there.
That's right, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And where that leg shot is right out here.
Yep. And the TV image does not match the photograph, because he certainly isn't shown kicking his leg out. So as he's coming down the ladder, he's coming down relatively gently. And that bright piece of light, the triangular piece of light, that is Armstrong, who was standing in the sunlight. And that is the idea behind the NVIDIA film, that they discovered that Armstrong would reflect enough light into the scene. But you can see how dark it is. You can hardly tell Aldrin. You can just see a very ghostly-like shape.
Well, wouldn't the TV camera be able to pick up as much light as the Hasselblad?
Well, you'd think so, but then the TV camera probably had an automatic aperture on it. And because the brightest section was the surface, it was photographing that. The aperture would be open to the point where the surface would not be overexposed. But that meant that Aldrin was seriously underexposed, which rather backs up the idea that there isn't enough reflected light coming out from anywhere, let alone the lunar surface, to illuminate Aldrin to the degree that we see in the photograph on the left, where he's basically lit up like a Christmas tree.
Well, it's just multiple scene takes. You changed the lighting up,
Yep.
changed everything else up. The TV camera has now disappeared from there, and when the TV camera was live, Neil Armstrong would have to be right there to take that photograph at the same time as he's coming down the ladder. As you can see, right back to the rear leg on here.
Yes,
So he
you
has
can.
to be right into there. And here he is over here.
Yep.
And if you watch the video of Neil, just before he steps into the light, he says, "It's so dark I can't see my feet."
That's right, yep. So where's all this reflected light we keep hearing about from Apollo apologists? There's some serious anomalies about this whole program. And it's only, it's only because it's been examined in such detail with the equipment we have in the 21st century that it's been uncovered. Which is great, because at least we now get some honesty out of NASA. But of course NASA can't admit that they fooled us all. Because they'll probably get shut down.
Well, that's putting it mildly. Sorry, Neil, I was going to say...
Here's another image to go with that. That's the upper window.
Oh, that's right, yeah, the famous image of the flag reflected
That's this window up here.
That's right, yes, that window.
And the image is there, and it's already deployed before Buzz comes down.
Yeah, because they officially only put the flag up once they were both on the lunar surface.
Well,
So
the
what's
video
that?
certainly to show that.
Yeah, but you
Video
see,
shows clearly.
that image is supposed to show something inside the lunar module. That's what the apologists will tell you. That's what I've been told. That isn't a flag, that is something inside the lunar module. Well, if it is, it's giving a remarkable impression of the American flag.
Yeah. Wasn't that line, that what we see as the flagpole, wasn't that like in videos I've seen like a scale of maybe degrees or something on the window where they're measuring the angle of the moon or something as they're flying towards it or something like that? I could be wrong, but
That's
I
right.
think
Yes.
something similar. Yeah.
Yes, there is. There are supposed to be charts inside the window, and sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. But you think that
I
if
can
that
show you that. 30. Maybe it's down here.
some photographs do show it, I know.
Yeah.
It's in one of the videos. I should come back to here and just show you this. Why? Here's another one of their test streams in front of this.
Yeah, that's the one of Apollo 11.
Yeah.
Where it's showing as a date about 5 days before they took off.
Okay, I'm just going to speed this up a bit. See the double shadow there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is supposed to be uncut,
Yeah, this is uncut. This is filmed from inside the
and
capsule.
there it broke. They just redid it, and
Yeah.
there's the flag in the different position.
Yeah, that's
Go back and do that again. Let's have a look at that again.
I have it on double speed right now. Quite clearly the double shadow.
Yeah, there is. Double shadow, and the flag is completely different position. That's probably one of the biggest giveaways of them all.
Can the actual moment of the cut be identified? When it clipped went from one image to the other? Because obviously this can't be a continuous shot.
Here's the
That's the scale on the window.
up on the window.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's what I was referring
definitely
to.
not doing the flag.
There's two scales on there, actually, isn't there? Not one.
That's right. Okay. So we saw
Yeah.
those two things on there, right? And then,
Okay.
being we got the flag in the different position, I got that one.
Yeah.
This one here. That's the very last shot out the window before they took off. Okay?
Right.
Then it goes to the DAC image that we just watched live. The flag's in a completely different spot. Both astronauts are in the craft.
And
Right.
after they placed it into position, neither of them touched the flag until they took off. So how come the flag is at a 90 degrees different position?
Yeah, well,
So-
they're back in the craft to shoot this again.
Yeah.
They don't get out again.
Blame it on Jones.
Wow.
Or the solar wind.
Could have been any of the guys down on the crew.
Yeah.
You know, you were talking
Here-
about the. Sorry, I'll.
Here again's the double image showing up again in Apollo 14.
So there's essentially two light sources here then, causing a strong shadow and then a lighter shadow because there's a light coming from another side or something.
But you can see they're adjusting the lighting because it's on this side and then it changes
Yeah.
to this side.
Yeah.
They're
I
actually
see.
adjusting it. And these guys are just sitting inside fooling around with the cameras, taking shots.
Because they're bored.
Well, you know, it's not lunchtime.
Yeah.
It's not time for golf yet.
Oh yeah, this is interesting.
This is the part of the other video I watched that I showed you on the takeoff of Apollo 16.
Uh-huh.
That they actually put the explosive pack up inside there.
Right.
Okay? You could see the deterioration of this piece of equipment from laying around. The paint's all peeling back on it. And these guys deliberately did that. What is behind those panels? I mean, they're not sealing anything. They're just there to cover it over. All their communications, so-called, all their actuators to run all the retro rockets, all their power, and all their computer stuff is supposed to be in there. Right behind the panels, and there's no protection from them. If they blew it like that, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Never mind the impact. You saw the amount of impact of that. It would rupture the craft in space, and it would just be a big explosion.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
This is one of the most staged scenes that they did, and it's showing that everybody was in on this fraud. Okay. They piled this dirt up. They set this tool down to make an arrow, and at the end of the arrow, and you can see the rubber tip and the black ring on the tip right in there on it, and the glove goes up to there and it's pinned in along there, and that's the pinky finger of a right-handed glove, and then all the fingers are sticking up here in it. And if you study that, this whole area in here, they're like stacked in like a half dozen gloves in a stack, and all the fingers are sticking out all the way through that.
Just to elaborate a little bit for those that don't know, you're suggesting, Scott, that this was shot in Arizona at a what do you call it?
At the just north of Flagstaff, Cinder Lake. That's a military center, and NASA is there, and the landfill site is on the
landfill site. That's it.
southeast corner of Cinder Lake. It's still in operation today, and people say, "Oh, they don't understand what I mean by landfill. It's not a garbage dump. It's not a refuge dump like that. This is where they were just putting out old cars and heavy machinery and stuff like that, metal pieces and stuff like that. They just put them out, planes, rockets.
So just to understand what's going on here, what's this with the rubber gloves tips sticking out? Are we saying they're buried? I don't get
Yeah,
it.
they set this up. They staged it.
So it's rubber gloves in a kind of Star Trek simulated rock, foam rock or something.
It's not a
And
rock. It's just dirt.
Dirt. They've covered it over, and there's gloves sticking out of it. Yeah.
This is what. This was a big point in the Dark Moon book by Mary Bennett and David Percy. There was the people involved in this. They actually deliberately put these things in, hoping that maybe years down the line, people like Marcus and Scott would actually spot them. They'd spot these errors and be able to do something to put the word out. So it's as you said. I think Scott, you said that they were, in a sense, that tool there that they've actually laid deliberately to point to this particular spot.
That's right.
Oh, it's
Everything about this is intentional. You can look at all the photographs. You'll never see a pile of dirt like this.
because that's all. If I was on that film crew, I'd have wanted to do something like that. Because
Let's put up there with a backhoe.
Hmm.
Here's the Apollo 15 lander. This arm sticking down is the lowering arms for the rover itself. You can see that it's crushed in. They actually dropped the machine while they were doing the simulation. And the close-up here shows the lowering arms that lower it down are broken right off. They're sheared right off there, and all of these are sheared off that lowered the rover down. And that's how the rover initially got damaged. That's why the front left fender is damaged on it when it's on the initial. You see it. That's how the steering got damaged. And well, the one battery bank was down. Two of the batteries were gone on it, so it couldn't possibly run the distance it said it did or the speed it was running at. But this is the shot of it. There's mold on the sewage bag. I mean, this just came out of the lem, right? They just set it out.
Yeah.
It's got mold on it. I mean, all these things happen in a few minutes. Here's some more shots of the damage. Of course, it took 3 days before they even took any outside shots around the lem itself. This leg is not positioned in the center anymore because the ball joints sheared right off of it. The two backpacks, the plisses, here's one here, there's one here. This guy's wearing one, and the guy behind the camera has to have one. So only two are issued. But you can see just the cooling coil right there went inside these two canisters, and they're just riveted together. If they were actually working in a vacuum, they'd have to be welded solidly to be able to do what they're going to do. These are just cooling when they're running around on Earth to keep them cool in the suits. Okay, both of them were damaged though, so I had to go get some other ones to put them on for the shot. Here's another shot. This is the leg that's broken, that was completely sheared off. And if you watch the video of them landing, you can see this leg kick out. These are the ball swivel joints here, because the legs swung in when they loaded it on the rocket and then swung back out again. And here they are, nicely replaced, and they just left the broken ones on the ground. Okay? These legs have a compression of 32 inches, and they have a honeycomb aluminum in them, 2 cartridges of honeycomb aluminum, and they squash down like a pop can. There's no rebound damping. They're not like a car shock or anything else. They crush down to take the impact of the landing, and they don't recoil back. So they travel 32 inches. This one is 32 inches. This one's over 4 feet. Okay, because I had to try and get it up. This is the new strut. This one has no compression at all. Because if it had any compression, the foil would wrinkle up. Just the weight of this machine, without any G-force landing, these things are supposed to come down 10 inches. Okay? Nothing at all is happening with them.
It's very
Okay.
sad, isn't it? that for
Yes.
40, 50 years, this story's been fed to us that man landed on the moon.
I mean, we've even got the movie coming out, First Man, haven't we?
Oh yes. Yeah, that's you're at the end of
And
this
everyone's
week.
going to be lauding about it. I mean, the BBC or Channel 4, all the mainstream media, they're going to be, oh, the First Man, isn't it a wonderful movie to, celebrate the landings on the moon? And essentially it's all bollocks.
I'm going to be reviewing that film because I suspect it'll have a lot of propaganda in, probably some subtle hints that are trying to discredit what we've been talking about this evening. Because, as you say, will not speak openly about this because they know it's counterproductive from their point of view because it only draws more attention to something which is logically provable, and they don't like that. So I'm interested. I'm interested to see it. I will go and watch that film, and I'll review it.
Well, I should. Yeah, I'll be watching it as well. I think it's going to be interesting to see just how they manage to spin the story.
Here's a comparison of the place. This is the museum. This is what's on display in the museum. Everything that's supposed to be in it. The batteries there, the oxygen tank, the 2 purge tanks at the top. Somewhere tucked in there is supposed to be the radio communication. See this cooling coil right here? That's it, right in there.
I see.
So this, what we're looking at is the inside of the backpack for each astronaut. Okay. So,
on the left, but this is what they had with them.
Yeah. So, if they spent 2 hours on the moon, allegedly, did they go back and refuel their oxygen tanks or not?
No.
They have them recharging in some of their log files that they're putting water back in them.
And what about oxygen?
No, they just anything that's in the cuff checklists are to check the oxygen on and off, and that's about it.
But then we're back to the question: why is it that scuba divers can only have 45 minutes? I don't understand.
I don't know why they didn't have additional oxygen with them on board the rover.
And certainly nothing to recharge the batteries with either. No solar panels or anything like that.
But this is
none of the batteries on the equipment were rechargeable. The only rechargeable battery was the one for the central processing station, and it was recharged by the RTG.
And also the coming back to the oxygen, these canisters of oxygen, presumably this was high pressure gas, like a gas. Well, they're spheres, but they were like the gas cylinders you see today, very high pressure. This would have added to the problem we talked about earlier with the vacuum, the interstellar vacuum.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Was it 10 to the power 17 Torr value or whatever? This would have added to it because you'll have something that is actually higher than atmospheric pressure, which has to have some kind of some kind of valve in order to deliver the gas to the astronaut. It has to have some kind of conduit and a valve. They would also have to be able to resist this enormous pressure difference.
Yes. Here's just another example of the exhaust bell housing. This is a 15 showing it's damaged and where it's wrinkled, and these scratches here. This is Apollo 17. They're using the same equipment for all the missions. Just amazing.
If they've been doing their job properly, they'd have built a different set for every single mission just to avoid little things like this. They'd have had a different rover, they'd have had a different craft, etc., etc. But maybe they thought, oh, why bother? No one's going to notice. Let's just use the same props over and over again. Let's use the same scenery, the same props, and just hope that no one spots these things.
Well, that's what they thought, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
There was an interesting presentation at the British Interplanetary Society I went to about a month or so ago by one of the guys who worked on the Hexagon spy satellite, KH-9. And he designed the optical system for the cameras, because it was basically a spy satellite. They was photographing Russia and China and Vietnam and anywhere that America thought the baddies were. The point he made about it was that they were using film, and what they discovered was that if you put film into a vacuum, the emulsion breaks down. So in order to operate the film in the Hexagon spy satellites, they had to have the film continuously pressurized. And they did it with a very complicated system of tubing and pipes in which the film was carried. The tubing and pipes were all pressurized with helium gas, albeit at only 1 pound per square inch, but it was still pressure. So every film transport mechanism had to have pressurized tubing around it, Now, obviously, there's magic on Apollo, and the film didn't need to be pressurized. But of course, photographic film will delaminate if you don't put it if you don't put pressure on it, which rather destroys the whole idea of the Apollo cameras, the film cameras and the still cameras, operating in a vacuum, because the film emulsion would just break down. Despite Kodak's insistence that they developed a special thin emulsion for Apollo, which they never actually.
And also, the spy satellite operated in Earth orbit, not as far away as the moon.
Yes, that's right. It did, and the film had to be dropped out of the satellite and caught in a especially equipped aircraft as it plummeted to the Earth on the end of its parachute. I mean, it was a fairly complex system, but it seemed to work because they got the photographs that they wanted. And until they dropped one of the planes missed one of the canisters. They were called buckets, size of a football, and they had parachutes on them and all the rest of it. And one day the plane missed, and the thing fell into the sea. Into 13,000 foot of water.
Oh no.
And they went and collected it. That's how important it was.
Crikey.
To find something at that depth, I mean, it's rather like finding the Titanic. This was in the mid-1970s, when the Vietnam War was getting hot. So NASA actually gives the game away by declassifying this sort of information. It's only recently been declassified, the spy satellite stuff. And the question I always ask about this stuff is, who's ever heard of the X-37B, the unmanned miniature version of the space shuttle? Where does it go? 712 days it spent on its last mission. Nobody knows where it goes. Nobody knows who controls it. Nobody knows what it's about. And yet, people say secrets can't be kept. Of course secrets can be kept. If national security is at stake, and on Apollo national security was at stake, secrets can be kept. But
and of course it's worth noting that NASA is not a civilian organisation, it is a government branch of the military. So everyone would be under this official Secrets Act, essentially.
Yeah, of course they would.
Whatever the American equivalent is.
And also, given the American character, which is admirable in many ways, they would go along with the idea that national security is at stake. We're in the race to beat those damn Ruskies. We'll do what we can. If it means keeping secrets, we'll keep secrets. Which they did.
What are we looking at here now, Scott? Looks like radiation belts?
Marcus can take this one. He can show the different flight paths.
Yeah, it's the path through the radiation belts that we're told that the Apollo spacecraft flew through the edge of the radiation belt in order to avoid the worst effects of it. It's strange that you have bad effects some days and not effects other days. The point about that is that given the way the radiation belts are set up around Earth, they're thickest at the equator and thinnest or almost non-existent at the poles. In order to fly through the edge of it, you'd have to go on a polar trajectory. Now, when a spacecraft is launched from Florida, you can see America there on the left of the globe, on the right-hand picture. Florida is near the equator, so when it launches, it flies out across the Atlantic towards Africa. In order to change the trajectory to a polar trajectory, i.e. going up and down, you have to launch from a completely different location on a completely different flight path. But Apollo never did that. Apollo flew on basically an equatorial flight path, not on a polar trajectory.
This is the original.
That's right.
Right here. This is the original. This is what Amy at Vintage Space claims, and this is from the Smithsonian, and they're showing it turning 90 degrees north. I don't know how you have enough fuel to do that. It's not in the commentary, it's not in the documentation, and it's not in the timeline.
Exactly. So there is no way, once you're set off on your trajectory, you can't just change through 90 degrees. It's not possible. The laws of motion don't allow it for a start. You have to launch in the direction of the trajectory you want to achieve, which is why most of the space shuttle launches that were military and usually would launch into polar orbits were launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. So people didn't actually see where the spacecraft was going. It was all secret.
So they've updated the Apollo missions to this direction now, but they haven't updated the Orion.
There's also another issue to do with these diagrams. Now, I've noticed this on all these diagrams, and I mean, you could put it down to convenience, but on nowhere in these diagrams does it have the words "not to scale." This came up earlier on because you see here that the Earth and Moon, you get the idea that the Earth and Moon were quite close. And I know obviously this is simply a qualitative assessment, but it's enough to sway people's opinions because, as I said earlier, if you really had this to scale, it would be the equivalent of having the Earth representing a beach ball and the Moon representing a cricket ball and having them about 15 feet apart. The Apollo missions weren't only higher than any other manned space missions, they were many times, hundreds of times higher, further than any other manned space mission. You're talking about 270,000 miles as opposed to just a couple of hundred miles. And when you realise that, it kind of puts it in perspective on a qualitative level. It may open the doors to other questions.
Anyway, there is one more flight path where they're showing them taking off left. I don't just see it here. Yeah, here's one. Taking off to the west and then turning and going down. And of course, they videotaped every launch, so all of them went to the east. I don't know how they can just dream this up and expect people to believe it.
Interestingly, there's never been a complete live stream from launch to the moon all the way through.
No, but you see them going out over the Atlantic Ocean. They didn't go across like this one shows.
Well, what I'm saying is like if it had been a real mission, surely there'd be no problem in live streaming it constantly. You know, there should be some footage, literally from the launch pad.
They can't stream it in 1960s technology like we can today, though.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is that they did it. They managed to send images to Earth, to Houston, didn't they? They televised images. So why couldn't they have just done that? All streaming means is a flow of information. So if they could send images of them waving and saying hello and welcoming their family and all that kind of thing, why couldn't they have done that all the way through from launch to getting to the moon?
Yeah, because some of the footage inside the capsule was filmed on, I think it was 16mm film camera, which you'd see after the mission. Yeah.
I'm talking about live.
But I don't think they had it. I don't think they had live broadcasts from inside. They might have done. I'm not 100% certain.
I thought they did. Marcus, can you clarify this? I thought they did have live broadcasts.
Yes, that's the subject of Bart Sibrel's film, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon.
Yes.
On Apollo 11, where you get Neil Armstrong demonstrating how far away from the Earth they are. And we see that it's actually a transparency stuck on the window.
Yeah, of Earth. Yeah.
Of Earth.
When the lunar orbiter is talking to Houston, isn't there video footage as well? That's supposedly live.
Yes.
I seem to remember kind of like black and white kind of news things like, and now we have images live from the moon, man landing live on the moon. Wasn't that the case?
Yes, there were.
So in theory they could have live streamed. I know live streamed is a modern phrase, but all it means is a flow of information. They could have live streamed all the way from Earth to the moon. There should be, footage that long, for that length.
I imagine they ran out of battery power to do it, because There was a sort of, a couple of hours, I think the transmission was on Apollo 11. On Apollo 12, Al B managed to point the camera directly at the sun, which burnt the lens out, which meant that they couldn't transmit anything. So people got a bit pissed off that their repeats of I Love Lucy were being interrupted, and they complained to NASA. So they had to come up with Apollo 13, which got everybody on the edge of their seat. Great piece of space rescue, that was.
So I thought, maybe I'm wrong, were they using solar panels or not, or is that a later technology?
That's,
No. They were using
Skylab, I think.
Yeah, they were using fuel tanks, fuel cells to generate the energy, which was basically powered by batteries.
What's the solar panel thing on the moon? I thought they left a bit of kit that had solar panels.
Yes, that was on Surveyor 3, which is the unmanned craft which landed about 2 or 3 years before Apollo.
Right, so they did have solar panel technology.
Well, they claim it's solar panel.
I can pull that up.
Here we go, special solar panels.
Now you got moisture there, or peeling back surfaces again.
This is Apollo 12. This is the same guy with the wet knee.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and what is remarkable is the Soviet surveyor is identical to this machine. Even the cutouts up here are identical on the thing, except when I was looking through their document on it, one side is a solar panel and the other side is supposed to be a high gain antenna.
Uh-huh.
The American version just has 2 pieces of particle board that are called solar panels.
Yeah, they look like little bits of a table, maybe a wooden board.
Yes.
Looks like they're screwed on underneath. It's like you'd expect from a folding table.
Absolutely. And he wiped his finger across here. It even says in the cup checklist to wipe their finger on all the surfaces. And the panoramic camera, which is being shown here, the mirror at the top, which is focused down, is completely covered in dirt. And he wipes his finger across it to show you that it's completely covered in dirt, which means it wouldn't take a photograph anyway.
Yeah, because as that thing landed, there was presumably a retro rocket to slow it down, which would kick up a bit of dust, which is what we know happens when you fire a rocket as you approach the lunar surface. As Buzz Aldrin says so, kicking up some dust as he lands at Apollo 11.
Scott, could you bring up the footage of the astronaut falling over, and then he calls his mate over to help him up, and it looks like there's kind of wires hoiking him up.
There's where they hook the wires on. That's right at the waistband.
We haven't yet got on to the cars on the moon, which sounds like Sunday sport material, but honestly, Scott's...
Is it a Nazi Elvis landing a car on a UFO?
Not quite, but he's found a few classic cars on the moon. Honestly, this is true. It sounds rubbish, but when Scott pulls up the pictures, you'll see what I mean.
Okay, let's have a look. We'll go right to them now.
Yeah. Show us, Scott. This is.
By the way, Colin, thanks for coming on the show. We're glad to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Very helpful.
That's cool. I'm glad that people are here.
Right,
that's Apollo 11.
Okay. So this would be a car that's covered in like the artificial dust or something they create to cover.
That was not covered up by much.
No, you
that's
still
just
see
way off
shape
in the
of it.
distance. It's right underneath that arrow there.
Yeah.
You zoom in at the horizon, and I mean, if you see a moon rock that looks like that, that's got side windows on it, and
wheel arches.
To me, it looks like a Nissan hut, bizarrely.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't have that particular. I just put a shot of a car down here just to show you it's a car. That's one of Buzz Aldrin's cars. GM gave them all matching Corvettes, eh? All the astronauts.
This is good. This one.
That's.
I really don't need to say too much. There's one that's upside down behind there. You know, there's more over in here on it.
Are you actually serious? There's supposed to be cars on the moon.
Well, I think what they're saying is that was this actually filmed in like a junkyard or something?
This is the junkyard.
That's covered in dust and
in Arizona. in
Yeah.
Arizona.
Yeah, I think it's Arizona as well, because the reason why was because when I was looking at when they were doing the Mars training, and if you look at the train of the Mars training, it's almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
Scott, could you bring up the browser? Can you bring up at like Firefox or something, and go to YouTube?
Oh, we're going to look at the astronaut getting pulled up.
Yeah, I want to look at the hoiking. I want us to look at that because that is pretty damning.
We have an astronaut who's about to get up.
Okay, here we go.
Let me give you a hand, Sex.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
Look at it again. The astronaut is getting up with a wire taking the weight.
Yeah. He just slides up on one foot, doesn't he?
Now, I don't know if Paul Daniels was helping him on the moon or David Copperfield.
Yeah.
Like, this is the central processing station, right? You can see that it's just stuck with mud, covered with rust.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely nothing inside of it.
What was supposed to be inside of it?
This is the central processing station.
So there's
All of
supposed
the
to be future
equipment,
stuff.
all of the equipment for all the experiments are powered by this machine. If you can call this a machine.
Wow.
Okay, it's got the transmitters supposed to be in there. Everything's supposed to be there. A great big pack of battery is supposed to be 36-volt batteries, twice the size of a car battery. Is supposed to be in there, and the RTG is supposed to be powering it.
Could
Okay.
it be argued that those parts were in there, but they've taken them out and they've distributed them or used them elsewhere? Could that be
This
argued?
is just after they set it up.
Right.
Brand new, out of the box, set up and took. They set it up and took a picture of it after they set it up when they got to the moon.
Doesn't look very straight, does it? That top looks a bit wonky.
No, that is very wonky.
It looks like it's been dropped, perhaps
That-
with a
Well,
lunar module.
This is how it was prepared. This is the experimental package, right? The experiments are on the top.
Mhm.
This thing is supposed to convert in and power everything, and that's all they did is the frame. You can see there's mold all over it. This is just an old piece of equipment that they were practicing with here on Earth and filmed it here on Earth.
I just can't believe that's supposed to be new. That looks like something that's 10 years old in a junkyard.
Prepared in a clean room. A
It's
NASA clean room.
Bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
Same
Bizarre.
as this equipment.
The other one, because you mentioned transmission, that's another one which I don't think anyone really thought about. When you
This
listen
is
to
the antenna. This is the antenna. It worked as a barbell for them to transport it out and then became the antenna.
Right. Yeah, carry on, Colin.
well, my thing was data transmission
Yeah.
and voice transmission. That's another one. The amount of time it would have taken, the distance that you're at. I don't think anybody's really thought about that. Because it's not something which they really cover. There's no delay.
Right.
I've
There's actually water
noticed that.
here. There's
Excuse
actually
me?
water standing here. Water that's dried back and the mud stuck to it here with green mold around the outside. This one's been laying around so long it's all peeled up here and it's curled back. You can't tell me they just took it out, set it up, and took a photograph of it.
What would be the delay in communications between Moon and Earth, realistically, Colin?
You have to take into that any electromagnetic wave is traveling at the speed of light, but then you've got the fact that you're quite far away, so it's going to take first of all seconds and then minutes. The further away you are, I mean, from the moon, it's probably going to take about a minute for any transmission to go there and come back.
Right.
As you're going out, I mean, it's going to take seconds once you start getting outside the Van Allen belt. And
Right.
so there will be a delay. There'll be a definite delay on any communication, and there'll be a delay on any data being sent. And you've also got, that's the one I'd really like to know. I'm actually going to look into that in a second. I want to know what type of data they were sending, so how large was the data packet. So,
Right. Yeah.
because how much data can you send over a certain amount of time? And the fact is that it's 1960s, so the bandwidth wasn't very large.
Marcus, do you know the official, when Nixon was talking to the men on the moon, or I think they're supposed to have called Nixon, do you know if there was like a minute delay between them talking?
in in the recording of the conversation that they had, it was about a 2 or 3 minute conversation.
Yeah.
It's mainly Nixon talking. There's very few to and fro's between Nixon and Armstrong. There does appear to be a slight delay, and if we're talking about the speed of light, which Colin was, we're saying that it would take, given the distance of the moon, about 1.3 seconds each way. So there should be an appreciable delay in a question being asked and the answer being received. There'll be a minimum speed of light transmission.
Yeah.
Presumably, the frequency on which it was being transmitted would be affected by the magnetic field around Earth and by the plasma field around Earth. But yet there doesn't appear to be any record of that occurring or even being reported. So to receive a signal from the moon with the accuracy required for a television picture would require a movable antenna. And the Earth spins at, 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. So you're going to have to, for a 5-minute transmission, you're going to have to move it quite a distance to record it. And how did they even do the calculation to work out that, given that the moon is spinning as well, where on earth the antenna would have to be to receive this? Because it's got to be direct line of sight.
Okay, we can hear you.
This is the CSM. There's a rain guard on it. Why would there be a rain guard on a CSM? There's no rain in space. When I was looking back through the report server, one of the tests they were doing in the vacuum chamber burst this window out. Okay, broke the seals on the window, just burst it right out. So they literally have just duct taped it back into place, put a rain guard on it because it was still leaking. And on the right-hand picture is water, and the water's in between the 2 layers of glass, and the paint's peeling up in between. But this photograph is said to be taken halfway to the moon.
Right.
Claimed to be in 0 gravity, so there's water running down in zero gravity. Shouldn't do that, and it's minus 250 degrees outside, so it should just freeze.
NASA must love you.